Is it true, just after our exchange there on the Harris report, is it true that Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell's team have been trying to keep you off the airwaves?
No, that's why I'm here this evening.
Well, you said that you book your own appearances, that you don't run them through the leader's office.
No. We work very closely with the press office.
But they regard you, that the two Js regard you as a bit of a liability after your brain fade on police costume.
I'm here. I've just come from doing another media interview. I'm going on to do another media interview. There's no truth in the idea that I'm not in the media, particularly talking about what happened on London Bridge.
You think you're an asset, clearly, not a liability to the front bench.
I think I'm Shadow Home Secretary, and it'd be very strange if the Shadow Home Secretary wasn't doing interviews like this.
And you think that in 3-4 days' time you will be the Home Secretary?
I think the most important thing is that in 3 or 4 days' time we actually win the general election, and then Jeremy will choose his cabinet.
Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you back. We're going back a little bit in time, not too far back, but we're going back to the Corbyn election, which was an interesting time. We got an interview, if you remember. This is a bit of a car crash interview with Diane Abbott, but this isn't the one about the police people with on LBC with Nick Ferrari. This is one that happened around a similar sort of time, which was with Dermot Murnaghan on Sky News. And it was a little bit of a setup, really. You could sort of tell they were trying to catch her out a little bit, and they threw some things at her that she'd obviously not got any idea about, which she should have had, really. She'd obviously she was, believe it or not, Shadow Home Secretary. Imagine if Corbyn had won and Diane Abbott ends up as Home Secretary. Frightening thought. But it was information from a report that he was talking about it was regarding resilience of London against terrorist attacks and how it would protect its people with certain mitigations, what they would do, building certain structures and things to stop any sort of vehicle terrorism attacks and other things. And this was sort of to discuss that further down the line, but it was an interesting interview, and she I don't know what she was on at the time, but she was just seems to be out of it, like she was on some sort of drugs or something, you know, some very strong pharmaceuticals or something. I think there was talk about her having problems with diabetes, I think, at the time, and it was to do with that. I think her blood sugar must have been really high on this particular day. Apparently she'd had had a few car crash interviews this day. But this was an interesting one, and she obviously is another car crash interview, well worth watching, and she obviously totally clueless about what he's talking about and tries to bumble her way through it as if she knows what he's talking about, knows about the reports, but obviously doesn't. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Well, the Shadow Home Secretary, Diane Abbott, joins me now. OK, so you've got 10,000 more police officers coming on stream. How many of them will be involved specifically in community policing aimed at Muslim communities?
Well, I don't know about being aimed at Muslim communities, but they definitely will all be community police officers.
The 10,000 community police officers, then?
10,000 community officers up and down the country. In
so
England
no
and
more
Wales.
detective inspectors, no increase at any other level, just with community police?
We're starting with community policing because we think
is that all the 10,000 or some of them?
We're starting with 10,000 community police officers because we think that helps make people safe and will help to fight terrorism and other forms of crime. But that is not to say...
And can I just be here, they're sworn officers, are they? They're not community police support officers?
No, these are sworn officers. 10,000 sworn officers in every ward in the country. And we think that's the beginning of making the British people feel safe. And we think Theresa May should be embarrassed that numbers dropped on her watch.
What role will they have? What role will they have in the communities they go into looking for terrorists? Chatting to them, or will they act then as the eyes and ears of the security services and the other forces, the anti-terror police, who have to come in and arrest them?
Their initial role will be to make those important links with the community. It's concerning, both in Manchester and in London Bridge, that members of the community said they tried to warn the police about their concerns about some of these individuals.
Well, they rang an anti-terror hotline.
And somehow nothing happened.
Well, it wouldn't have been community police, though. I mean, the community police are going around having a cup of tea in the mosque or something,
I think that everybody all the stakeholders in community policing know they play a very important role in building links between the community and the police.
Because that linking in the community, Jeremy Corbyn was quoted as having said something very interesting in 2014, that he had been speaking to people who were attracted to what ISIS is doing. I mean, it's a way of understanding the ideology. Have you done that?
No. No, because...
You don't want to understand what motivates these young men and women.
Everyone I speak to is completely horrified and disgusted by these terror attacks.
But there's no doubt there's an ideology there, isn't there? Isn't it worth talking to them, as Jeremy Corbyn says he's done, and trying to find out what motivates them?
I have a Muslim community in Hackney, but they are all horrified by these attacks.
Let me ask you about these attacks, because I revisited, as I'm sure you have recently, the Lord Harris inquiry, the recommendations that he made to Sadiq Khan about preparedness in London for a terror attack. Do you think some of the things he...
This is about, the next bit is about the report that he goes on to talk about, that she's obviously hasn't even read. She obviously doesn't know anything about it, but carries on pretending that she does know about it. And of course, it's obvious that she doesn't from what he says. Let's get into that.
He said in there were prescient and should be acted on. They haven't been acted on yet.
I think we do need to revisit that report, because... And we do
Which part of it?
Well, I just think it's about preparedness and resilience.
But he made some very specific recommendations that haven't been acted on. Do you know what they are?
Well, he was talking about preparedness and resilience, and I do think that we need to act not necessarily on every specific recommendation.
But you remember the report came out only in October 2016. The mayor, the newly elected mayor, commissioned it. It came out in October 2016, and Lord Toby Harris had some bullet points. That's what I've read through. I mean, what did you make of those? The specifics.
I thought, because I know Toby Harris, he's a very
long-standing
London
very thorough-blown
politician.
inquiry, I must say, and review.
I thought it was an important review, and I think we should act on it, but obviously working with stakeholders.
But what should we act on? I mean, what do you think of the recommendations about the various police forces in London?
You mean the idea that they should work more closely together?
Well, he suggested they should amalgamate.
Well, I think that's an interesting idea, but I think you'd find resistance in some parts of London to the amalgamation.
Have you actually read the report?
I have.
Okay, what about when you talk about, what about the physical resilience? Again, I'm referring to this because it seemed prescient.
Yes, I think physical resilience is important. I think that...
But there was a specific aspect of physical resilience.
Well, I think that physical resilience is important.
Yes, well, but the specific aspect was he talked about putting up more barriers in the light of the Nice attacks. He mentioned that in October 2016.
Yes, we're now putting up barriers on bridges, and you'd think we might have done that before, particularly after what happened on Westminster Bridge. But now, in the past few days, we've been putting up barriers on bridges.
So would you recommend putting up barriers around more public spaces? For instance, there are many spaces, even just in London, where people gather. Do you think around parks, around Covent Garden, around places like that?
Well, certainly in Westminster, which is where I work, there's been a lot more barriers and bollards to protect us from terrorism, and I think we need to consider that for other places in central London.
Is it true, just after our exchange there on the Harris report, is it true that Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell's team have been trying to keep you off the airwaves?
No, that's why I'm here this evening.
Well, you said that you book your own appearances, that you don't run them through the leader's office.
No. We work very closely with the press office.
But they regard you, that the two Js regard you as a bit of a liability after your brain fade on police costume.
I'm here. I've just come from doing another media interview. I'm going on to do another media interview. There's no truth in the idea that I'm not in the media, particularly talking about what happened
but you're not,
on London Bridge.
You think you're an asset, clearly, not a liability to the front bench.
I think I'm Shadow Home Secretary, and it'd be very strange if the Shadow Home Secretary wasn't doing interviews like this.
And you think that in 3-4 days' time you will be the Home Secretary?
I think the most important thing is that in 3 or 4 days' time we actually win the general election, and then Jeremy will choose his cabinet.
Do you think that the state visit offer should be cancelled for Donald Trump?
There are many people who didn't think the state visit offer wasn't appropriate.
But it's been...
This is what Labour actually think of Donald Trump, and they still think the same way. So don't be fooled.
Issued by the Queen, it's very difficult to revoke.
Well, it will be a matter for the palace, what happens by that offer, but I think most Londoners are disgusted by the offensive way that Donald Trump has chosen to talk about our mayor, who's offered such great leadership at this time.
OK, Diane Abbott, thank you very much indeed.
So there we go. A little bit of interesting ending to that as well, about Donald Trump and what Labour actually thought of Donald Trump at the time, and they don't think any different. In fact, it's probably worse now, because if you look at the makeup of the Labour Party, it's more left wing, more progressive, more activist based MPs, and people like Zara Sultana and people like that. So the opinions are going to be much worse. You can tell Starmer can't stand him. Starmer's just acting. And I think the feeling's mutual. I think Donald's worked him out. I think Trump's worked him out. Knows what a little Weasley is. So I don't think there's any love lost between them, really. So I just thought that was interesting, because that was from probably, I think, the same day as the LBC interview, the famous one about the 10,000 police people and how much they were going to cost. Next to nothing, £60 a year or something. And so she was just basically, at the end, he asked her there about her being a liability, and he tried to trap her with the report, see if she'd read it and all that sort of thing, and then tried to tease her in terms of what was in it, trying to get her to say she knew what was in it, which she obviously didn't, so she obviously hadn't read it. And then just blatantly asked her outright at the end there, you know, about whether she was a liability or not, which at the time she definitely was. You know, she was. I mean, there's how some people get into these lofty positions. There's just nobody going into politics of any note these days. You know, we used to have really good, intelligent people, real statesman-like people, you know, that could speak really well, and they were really good at coming across on TV, knew the stuff, read everything they needed to read. They were well genned up on everything that was going on. But these days, they're just phoning it in for whatever money, 90,000 a year, or whatever they get, 100,000 a year. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, I just thought that was worth a watch. Thank you for spending the time with us. If you can subscribe, that'd be great. And if you can like the video, that will really help us. And I will see you on the next one. Thank you.